This morning, I got 17 calls from numbers I didn't recognize. One of them left a voicemail. It was her dad, crying. I haven't heard that man cry once in the 9 years I've known him. Not when his wife had surgery. Not when his son totaled the family car. But this morning, he was in pieces. And all he said was, "I just didn't know. Hollis, we didn't know. I'm sorry." I haven't called him back. I don't plan to. Because 3 days ago, I was standing on the edge of a rooftop ballroom in Charleston, South Carolina, holding a glass of off-brand champagne, while my girlfriend, excuse me, Dr. Meredith Hale, publicly humiliated me in front of her entire extended family. And the part that really stings? I paid for every single person in that room to have a reason to celebrate. Let me rewind, but not too far. This isn't one of those "we met in a coffee shop" stories. You don't need to know how we fell in love. Honestly, I'm starting to question if I ever even knew what love looked like. What you need to know is this. I've been working since I was 15. I never went to college. I build things, mostly with my hands, sometimes with my heart. And I gave this woman everything I had, down to the last dollar in my savings account, because she told me, once, in the middle of the night when she thought I was asleep, "I don't want to be ordinary. I want to save lives." She saved her own. I just happened to be the wreckage she stepped over on her way up. Graduation weekend was supposed to be the payoff. Not just for her, but for us. I imagined she'd walk across that stage, look out into the crowd, see me, and smile the way she used to, like I was her entire reason for not giving up. Instead, I stood outside the hotel conference room listening through a sliver in the double doors as she laughed and told her cousin. He still thinks I'm bringing him to the residency dinner next month. Can you imagine introducing him to my mentors? I'd rather die. I mean, he's not even college educated. I'm a doctor now. They laughed. I didn't. I just stared. Not at her. At my own hands. The same hands that sanded the bookshelves she used to store her anatomy texts. The hands that packed her lunches for clinicals. The hands that signed the checks. It wasn't even anger I felt. It was something worse. Clarity. That kind of cold, merciless clarity that slices through you without warning. Like realizing you're the joke everyone's been laughing at, and you were the one who bought the microphone. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't throw a fit. I didn't cry. I just left the party, canceled the reservation for the private dinner I planned, and blocked her number. But now, she's not just calling me. Her friends are. Her residency supervisor emailed me. Even the hotel concierge messaged me on Instagram asking if I'm okay. You see, none of them know what I did after I left that party. And tomorrow morning, the rest of the world's going to find out too. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken, though I'd be lying if I said it didn't gut me, but because my body physically couldn't settle. There was this buzzing in my chest, like my bones were full of static. I kept hearing her voice on repeat. I'm a doctor now. The way she said it, like that somehow meant she transcended basic human decency. Like love had an expiration date tied to a salary bracket. I stared at the ceiling of the hotel room I paid for, not just for me, but for her parents too, by the way, and all I could think about was how many years I wasted letting her climb on my back while I called it partnership. The next morning, I woke up to find my phone had 23 missed calls. 6 from her, 2 from her mom, 1 from her brother, who I always thought had my back. The rest? Unknown numbers. At first, I thought maybe someone had died. Maybe there was an accident. Maybe she was in the hospital. But then I checked my email, and that's when the headache started. Someone had posted a video. Not just any video. A private video. A recording of Meredith, at the party, telling a group of people that she planned to phase me out slowly once her board scores were processed. She literally had a timeline for replacing me. It wasn't just her words. It was her tone. Mocking. Cold. She said things like, I needed a construction guy to get me through the broke years. Now I need someone who can get me through a charity gala without embarrassing me. Someone laughed in the background. She added, I mean, Hollis still thinks Cracker Barrel is fine dining. I don't know who filmed it. I don't know who sent it. But someone had a conscience that night. And they sent it to me anonymously, with the subject line, You deserve to know. I sat on the edge of the bed watching that video maybe 5 times. No emotion. Just numb. It wasn't until I noticed what she was wearing, the earrings I gave her on her second-year white coat ceremony, that something inside me snapped. Not in an angry, punch-the-wall kind of way. That's not me. I'm not a rage guy. I'm the kind of guy who disappears quietly, who starts making lists, Who pays attention? And who takes his time? So that's exactly what I did. I packed my bag, checked out of the hotel without a word, and drove straight back to the apartment we shared. Well, technically, the one I paid for, under my name, with my furniture. Meredith was scheduled to fly back the next day. I had a 24-hour head start. That was enough. I opened the door. Still smelled like her lavender diffuser. The kitchen sink was full of her dirty dishes. I walked straight to the storage closet, pulled out the box I never thought I'd need, the one labeled emergency use only. It had everything I'd been too sentimental to destroy: the lease papers, receipts, screenshots, bank transfers. Every transfer I'd made on her behalf. Every credit card bill she ignored. Every textbook I bought. The car I co-signed. She wanted to phase me out like a seasonal employee? Fine. But not before I made sure she'd remember exactly who built the stage she's now performing on. You see, I wasn't just her boyfriend. I was her unpaid investor. And every investor expects a return, or a reckoning. By noon that day, I was in contact with a lawyer. And by evening, I'd finally picked up one of those missed calls. It was her mother. And the first thing she said wasn't hello. It was, "What did you do?" Funny question, considering I hadn't even started yet. I didn't answer her mother's question, not out of rudeness, but because, truthfully, I hadn't done anything yet. Not in the way she assumed. No explosions. No public confrontations. No petty revenge posts. I hadn't even told anyone what really happened. But clearly, someone did, and whatever was whispered behind closed doors had already started to echo through their perfect little social circle. Meredith's world, the one she built so carefully with LinkedIn filters and humble-brag Instagram captions, was wobbling, and I hadn't even laid a finger on it. But let's be honest, she wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of the truth. You see, Meredith had a public image to protect now. She wasn't just some struggling student anymore. She was Dr. Hale, newly matched with one of the most prestigious internal medicine residencies in the state. Her program director followed her on social media. She had sponsorship opportunities, speaking invites, a clean-cut brand built on resilience and grit. She gave talks on beating the odds, on coming from a single-mother household, and funding her own way through med school. Except, she hadn't. I had. And I had receipts. Literal ones. I had PDF files of every textbook I ordered from her Amazon wish list. Bank statements showing transfers titled clinic prep materials and exam board fees. Venmo screenshots labeled groceries so you don't faint. I even found the invoice for the apartment's 3 years of rent, signed only by me. I didn't want to ruin her. That's not who I am. But I wanted her to look at herself in the mirror without the costume. No white coat. No curated caption. Just the truth. Raw, ugly, and earned. So, I gave her a choice. I drafted an email, not to her, but to the hospital's residency coordinator. I didn't send it, just saved it. Then I took photos of every document I had, uploaded them to a clean Google Drive folder, and created a shareable link. No accusations. No emotional rants. Just organized, time-stamped proof of how deeply she had lied. Not just to me, but to every person who ever clapped for her self-made journey. Then I called her. She didn't answer the first 3 times. On the 4th, she picked up, but didn't say anything. Just breathing on the other end. It was surreal. I knew her breath patterns better than my own heartbeat. But this time, they weren't calm. They were ragged. Panicked. All I said was, "Check your email in 10 minutes. I won't be sending it unless I have to. The decision's yours." She whispered my name like it was some kind of spell. Like she thought saying it gently would undo everything. "Hollis, please don't do this." I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't cry. I just said, "You made me invisible for your future. I'm just giving myself a voice in your past." Then I hung up. 15 minutes later, I got a single text from her. "Let's talk. Please. Not like this. I'll do whatever you want." But I didn't want anything anymore. Not an apology. Not an explanation. Not even closure. She had finally said the words I used to beg for. "I'll do whatever you want." But they came too late. Because what I wanted wasn't her anymore. It was peace. And you know what the sickest part is? I still loved her. I just didn't like what she'd become. It had only been a day since I gave Meredith that ultimatum, but the fallout was moving faster than I expected. I hadn't sent the email. The folder still sat untouched in my drive, like a grenade with the pin halfway out. I figured she'd panic, try to bargain, maybe even gaslight me into silence. What I didn't expect, not in a million years, was who would contact me next. Her sister, Heather. Now, if Meredith was the family prodigy, Heather was the black sheep. She dropped out of college, worked as a tattoo artist in Asheville, and was about as far removed from the white coat world as it got. Meredith never introduced her at parties. Always said she was complicated. But I liked Heather. She was blunt, a little wild, but never fake. We only saw each other at family events, Christmases, the occasional birthday, but there was always mutual respect between us. And when she called me out of nowhere, I almost didn't pick up. I was still in that shaky headspace where every phone buzz made my stomach twist. She didn't waste time. "I'm sorry," she said, not even giving me time to respond. "I saw the video. I was at the party. I didn't laugh. And I've been keeping my mouth shut for too long." I froze. "You saw it live?" "Every second of it," she said. "Hollis, she's not who you think she is. And I don't mean that in a petty, sisterly way. I mean it in a you need to brace yourself way." I sat down slowly on the edge of my bed, phone clenched tight. "What are you trying to say?" She paused. Then, with a sigh, dropped the bomb. "She's been seeing someone. Since last fall." I didn't speak. She told me it was harmless. That she deserved attention from someone who understood her world. I didn't say anything because, honestly, I figured it would fizzle out. I didn't think she'd actually leave you. Still, I said nothing. Not because I didn't believe her, but because a part of me, the part one hate, already knew. Heather kept going. "He's another resident. Some golden boy named Pierce. His dad's on the hospital board. I think they've been planning something. I don't know the details, but Hollis, she never planned to take you with her." Everything started clicking in my mind, like puzzle pieces I had ignored for too long. The nights, she came home too tired to talk, but stayed up texting in the bathroom. The new perfume I never complimented because I didn't recognize it. The second toothbrush I thought was for guests. Heather's voice cracked. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but I'm sick of the lies. And honestly, you were always too good for her." Funny. That's what I used to tell myself, just to cope. And now someone else was saying it like it was obvious. I thanked her. I didn't know what else to say. She offered to forward me screenshots if I needed them. I told her to hold off. For now. Because here's the thing. I was no longer chasing confirmation. I had what I needed. Proof. Motive. Even a potential accomplice. But I wasn't going to burn it all in one dramatic blaze. No. Meredith had built a world on borrowed time and borrowed truths. And now, I wanted to watch that world collapse, piece by curated piece. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to warn her again. But the moment her perfect future collided with the truth, I planned to be standing right there, watching. 2 days after Heather called me, I received an email that nearly made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so pathetic. The subject line read, "Clarifying intentions, from Pierce." At first, I thought it was a prank. But no, it was real. Meredith's shiny new boyfriend had actually typed up a full-blown, pseudo-legal sounding monologue to explain himself. I could tell right away this guy was the type who thought he was smarter than the room just because he owned a suit before age 30. He started with the line, "Hey man, I just wanted to reach out guy to guy, no bad blood." He called me guy to guy 3 times. Said he respected the role I had in Meredith's life, like I was her ex-manager or a retired pet. He admitted, and I quote, that he may have overlapped emotionally with her before our relationship officially concluded, but that it wasn't personal. Wasn't personal? I paid for that woman's entire education, stood in the back of her graduation party like a ghost, got humiliated in whispers she thought I'd never hear, and this tooth-whitened mannequin had the audacity to call it not personal? He finished the email with this. "I hope we can all move forward in peace. Please refrain from interfering with Meredith's residency." That's when I knew Meredith was desperate. She sent him. She was too proud to grovel herself, so she fed her golden retriever boyfriend some lines, hoping I'd back off. I didn't respond. Not with words, anyway. Instead, I forwarded the email to a brand new folder I'd created, titled Fallout. I added it to the growing collection of receipts, timelines, phone logs, texts from Heather, and screenshots of social media posts that directly contradicted Meredith's story of being financially independent since undergrad. But I wasn't just gathering evidence for some dramatic courtroom showdown. No, that's not how real consequences work. I wasn't planning to ruin her. I was planning to disqualify her. Quietly. Strategically. The way real damage gets done in high circles where image is everything. See, I knew someone who worked in the legal compliance office of her residency hospital. An old client from when I helped rebuild a fire-damaged staircase in his rental property. We stayed in touch over the years. Good guy. Sharp. Respected. He owed me a favor. So, I asked if we could meet. No pressure. Just coffee. We sat down at a diner. One of those places with laminated menus and the smell of burnt toast baked into the booths, and I laid it out for him. I didn't demand anything. I just showed him the truth. The money trail. The fraud. The resume inconsistencies. This self-made narrative Meredith pushed, complete with press interviews and scholarship essays that painted me out of the picture entirely. He didn't say much. Just read. Nodded slowly. And then he asked one question. Do you want her kicked out? I took a long sip of my coffee. Let the silence stretch. Then I said, I don't want her punished. I want her seen. He nodded again. I can work with that. What he did next wasn't dramatic. He didn't blow up her life in one email. He asked me for 2 weeks. 2 weeks to verify, to document, to cross-reference. He said there were protocols. He wanted it done clean. I trusted him. Meanwhile, Meredith started spiraling. She sent me a handwritten letter. Yes, on actual stationery, that arrived in my mailbox 3 days later. It smelled like her old perfume. She wrote that she was overwhelmed, that she had lost perspective, that being with someone who wasn't in her world made her forget who she really was. There was no apology, just pretty words wrapped in entitlement, as if I'd pity her into silence. But here's the thing, she had already unleashed me. And while she played dress-up in her white coat, I was quietly building a case so airtight, so bulletproof, that even Pierce would regret typing that smug little email. Because she didn't just cheat on me with another man. She cheated on everything I ever built for her. And now? She was about to find out what happens when you betray the kind of man who builds entire houses with his hands. Because when he starts tearing something down, he does it all the way. It started with a change in tone. Just a single sentence in a single email from the residency coordinator. Meredith forwarded it to Heather, who sent it to me with no context. Just the subject line circled in red. Please schedule a meeting with the Office of Professional Integrity this week. Now, to anyone outside the system, it might have looked routine, bureaucratic, but I knew better, and clearly, so did Meredith. Because for the next 48 hours, everything about her went quiet. Her social media, once full of inspirational captions and staged hospital hallway photos, went dark. No selfies, no status updates, no humble brags about overnight shifts or mentoring pre-meds. Nothing. And in its place, a single message, sent from an anonymous Instagram account with no profile photo. I don't know what you told them, but she's unraveling. Thought you should know. I didn't respond. I didn't even blink. Because it meant only one thing. The dominoes were finally tipping. I knew how this world worked. Hospitals, especially ones with prestige, don't like mess. They'll tolerate stress, ego, even a few ethics violations, but fraud? The kind that makes headlines if it slips through the cracks? That's a career death sentence. Meredith built her brand on being a first-generation medical success story. She got grants. She gave TEDx talks. She was scheduled to appear on a panel next month titled, Rising Above, From Food Stamps to MD. But now, someone in compliance was cross-checking her scholarship applications with her actual financials. Someone was pulling tuition records. Someone was asking questions she didn't have neat answers for. Like why her resume claimed entirely self-financed education, while 3 years of rent came from my account. Why she claimed no cohabitating partner, while filing paperwork that excluded our shared lease. And somewhere in the middle of that audit, the image started to break. Not with a bang. Not yet. But through a whisper. Heather called me that night. She sounded rattled. I think she's losing it. She's blaming everyone. She thinks you hacked her email, that I set her up. I tried to calm her down, but she's spiraling, Hollis. She's not sleeping, barely eating. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not exactly. But I won't lie. It felt like gravity was finally working again. Like the world was correcting itself, one shattered illusion at a time. The next morning, I got an email from my lawyer. Nothing dramatic, just a subject line that read, Recommendation, Forward Communication to Residency Ethics Board. It was time. I clicked the folder. Reviewed everything one last time. The proof of financial dependency. The public claims. The receipts. The emails. Here's his message. The video from the graduation party. And Meredith's handwritten letter. The one where she admitted she'd lost perspective. A carefully crafted euphemism for used you until I didn't need you anymore. But I hesitated. Not because I doubted the facts, but because I kept remembering how I used to watch her study on the floor of our old apartment, surrounded by flashcards and ramen wrappers. I remembered how she'd fall asleep on my chest in the middle of medical podcasts, her voice murmuring drug names in her dreams. I remembered the version of her I loved, or maybe just the version she pretended to be. But then I remembered something else. The day I tore a ligament in my hand working a winter contract job to cover her board exam fees. I didn't tell her how bad it was. I just came home, wrapped it up, and made her dinner so she wouldn't have to worry. She never even asked. So I clicked reply, and I wrote, "Yes, forward it all. I'm ready." I didn't press send right away. I stared at that button for a long time. And then, with a steady hand, the same one she said was too rough for her new life, I hit send. By the end of the day, the ethics board had my folder. And for the first time in this entire mess, I wasn't the one waiting. She was. It took exactly 5 days for the silence to become louder than any confrontation. No texts, no emails, not even from Heather, just stillness. And then, late Thursday night, I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Dustin, an old mutual friend of ours who used to bartend at the hole-in-the-wall pub Meredith and I practically lived in during her second year. He was never close to either of us, more like a friendly regular. But his message was short and sharp. "Hey, I just saw Meredith. Thought you should know. She's not okay." He didn't elaborate. He didn't have to. The next message was a blurry photo. Meredith, alone in a booth, hoodie pulled over her head, a half-empty glass of something dark in front of her. Her hair was disheveled. No makeup, no phone in sight. Just her, hunched over the table like a ghost of herself. And she wasn't at some upscale cocktail bar. She was at our old place. The same one where I used to wait for her after late-night study sessions. The one where she'd read over flashcards between bites of wings and sip on cheap wine while I teased her about mixing up pancreas and spleen. That bar was a time capsule, and she was sitting in it like someone trying to crawl back into the past. Dustin said she'd been coming there every night for the past 3 days, alone, drinking quietly, refusing to talk to anyone. The staff didn't know what to say. She'd always been the put-together one, the smart one, the future doctor. And now, she looked like a cracked statue, still technically whole, but undeniably broken in the eyes. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because there was nothing left for me to say. She hadn't reached out. Not since the ethics board received my folder. Not a single word. No defense. No denial. Just retreat. But the silence was an answer in itself. The next day, I got confirmation from my lawyer. The board had officially opened a character and conduct review, which is their sanitized way of saying, "We're digging into your soul with a scalpel." It wasn't a suspension, not yet, but it was the kind of internal audit that people didn't bounce back from. Once they started looking at your integrity, everything you touched became contaminated. And in a field like medicine, perception is half your resume. What I hadn't anticipated, though, was what came next. Her family started unraveling right alongside her. Heather called me in a panic that afternoon. Not angry, just overwhelmed. Apparently Meredith's mother had confronted her, accusing her of feeding the flames by talking to me. Her father, who once apologized to me, was now scrambling to salvage the family name. They were making calls, reaching out to donors, to hospital staff, to anyone they could find with a title or influence. Meredith wasn't just a daughter anymore. She had become an investment, and I had become the wrecking ball. But what none of them understood was that I hadn't created the wreckage. I just stopped sweeping it under the rug. Still, there was one more thing. One moment that stuck with me more than anything else that week. It was an envelope, left on my front porch. No return address. Inside, there was no letter. No apology. Just the stethoscope I bought her 3 years ago. The one with Dr. Meredith Hale engraved on it. It had a scratch on the tubing and a hairline crack near the bell, almost like someone had thrown it against something. That's when I realized she was done pretending. The Meredith everyone saw, polished, powerful, pristine, was gone. And in her place was a woman staring down the reality of who she had become when no one was looking. She wasn't fighting back anymore. She was hiding. But this story doesn't end with hiding. Because someone else, someone I never expected, was about to speak up. And what they said, it changed everything. I wasn't expecting the final blow to come from someone who used to babysit her. Her name was Claudia, a neighbor from Meredith's childhood, now a practicing nurse at the same hospital where Meredith had matched. I hadn't heard that name in over a decade. But then she messaged me out of the blue with something that almost felt like fate. She wrote, "I don't know if this matters now, but I need you to hear it from someone who watched her grow up. You didn't ruin her. She made her choices. You just refused to stay quiet while she called it survival." There wasn't any malice in the message. No drama. Just a kind of quiet empathy. The kind you only get from people who've known both your pain and the person who caused it. Claudia went on to say that after the internal review started, Meredith voluntarily withdrew from her residency. No suspension. No firing. Just a quiet, one-sentence resignation emailed at 3:14 in the morning. She left before they could finish the investigation. No fanfare. No press release. Just gone. In the weeks that followed, the world around her began to forget. Her name disappeared from the hospital website. Her profile photo came down. She deleted every social account. It was like she'd never existed in that polished, perfect form at all. And me? I thought I'd feel triumphant. I didn't. What I felt was light. Not giddy. Not joyful. But light. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know how to name. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to breathe deeply. I went back to work. Quietly. No announcements. No revenge victory laps. Just life. I rebuilt a porch for a retired teacher in her 70s who paid in cash and lemon pound cake. I fixed a rotted deck for a single dad who couldn't afford a contractor. I started saying yes to jobs I wanted instead of jobs I needed. One night, while I was cleaning out my shed, I found the old ring box I'd planned to use during Meredith's graduation. The promise ring. Simple, nothing flashy. I'd spent weeks picking it out, and then left it sitting in the dark. But this time, I didn't feel bitterness when I saw it. I smiled, because I realized I never needed her to say yes. I needed me to say no. No to being treated like a stepping stone. No to shrinking myself for someone else's spotlight. No to pouring love into someone who only ever treated it like a ladder rung. I didn't return the ring. I didn't throw it out either. I buried it. Under a cherry tree in the corner of my backyard, the one I planted with my own hands 5 years ago, the first time I thought I might actually have a home to grow something in. And every spring since, it blooms. Bright, wild, unapologetically alive. A reminder that sometimes, the most beautiful things grow from the deepest kinds of heartbreak, and that healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it just quietly decides not to hurt anymore. And that's the best kind of ending I could have asked for.